And we're live here on YouTube. What's going on, everybody? Mike Mayer here. Uh, Happy 4th of July, everybody. Excited. Haven't done a lot of podcasting recently. It's a good time to, come back. And I did a StreamYard after AEW Dynamite last night. And really, I wanted to come back on here and share my thoughts here on a lot of the stuff that's going on heading into the weekend here. A lot of 4th of July stuff. Put something up on my social media. And if you follow me on X at Off the Mic 28, we're going to get the podcast that I had. We're going to get that going on Twitter at OT Mike Wrestling. Thank you all for tuning in here. Impromptu, it's almost 11:30 Eastern, but it's 8:30 Pacific here on the West Coast. And, there's just a lot going on. It's big. We just had Forbidden Door. It feels like AEW is kind of picking some steam back up, like I alluded to in my StreamYard last night. That was the best episode of Dynamite all year. And I'm glad that sometimes, like I've said, wrestling isn't complicated. And, it really needs to be one of these situations where sometimes you just got to roll with the punches and just feel it out and just not be so stuck in your head based off of what the internet audience is telling you or what Cage Match or what any of these weird or any of these people who give you feedback, or like I said, even a CM Punk mouths off about how he didn't like working there, and it leads to some of the worst television I've ever seen from AEW. And that leads me to the first thing I really want to talk about here, because like I said, last night in Chicago was one of the best Dynamites of the year. I'll just go as far as to say it was the best Dynamite of the year. From top to bottom, there really wasn't a whole lot bad on this show. And I got to tell you, of all the angles that are going on heading into Blood and Guts in 3 weeks and also All In at the end of August, the least compelling angle right now for AEW is the Bucks, is the Young Bucks and the New Elite, because the Young Bucks came back at the start of the year. They went after Sting and Darby Allin, who ended up winning the tag team titles. They lost the match in Sting's final match, which was great. Some of it a bit unnecessary, and then they have this hostile takeover where they bring back Jack Perry. They aired the All In footage from last year. They bring back Jack Perry. They win the tag team titles, and then they attack Tony Khan. They're the EVPs, and they're taking over the company. And I've got to tell you, since the initial attack and the initial hostile takeover, I have started to give less of a shred of a shit about these guys. And the only thing that has really held this thing together is Kazuchika Okada, who has actually been, I thought it was going to be a weak point because English isn't his first language. He's coming over from Japan. He really hasn't been seen much to the vast majority of North American audiences, unless you're really into New Japan Pro Wrestling and know who he is, or when he had that brief run in TNA where he was really disrespected. And we know Kazuchika Okada, hardcore wrestling fans know him as the best wrestler in the world, but they didn't know that he really has a personality. And yeah, he's just smirking and doing all this comedy where he's just yelling bitch into the camera. And it's but when that's the best part of your act, when you're trying to sell yourselves as the EVPs and these evil people in power, even when the Authority was in their heyday 10 years ago, you took them seriously because Stephanie McMahon carried herself like an evil heel, and Triple H was really good as an evil boss. It was really extending from what Vince McMahon was when he was an on-screen character in terms of being that evil corporate boss that you don't want to root. But the Young Bucks, what they're trying to convince us here, I can't buy into it. And this is supposed to be one of your most compelling angles coming out of Sting's retirement. And obviously they made a big deal about the All In footage and everything there. And ever since any of that came out back a few months ago, this is as cold as that thing has been, because there was a case in point on this show last night, Beach Break in Chicago. What happens? Mark Briscoe announces that he's going to be on Team AEW heading, because there's been just a lot of messed up stuff that has been going on in terms of, like, building this compelling angle. FTR was supposed to be a part of this. Obviously, they're off television because Dax hit an injury. They're still trying to shuffle through. The Acclaim's probably going to be involved in this. Swerve Strickland's probably. But here's the problem: nobody cares about the Young Bucks. They don't. It's go away heat. Nobody wants to see these guys really interact or be involved in compelling television. I'd even care more about what's going on with Chris Jericho than what's going on with the Young Bucks. That might be a hot take, but look, at least Chris Jericho in his storyline, I have not enjoyed the Learning Tree stuff. Really, I have enjoyed pretty much since the Jericho Appreciation Society. Like, ever since the Inner Circle stuff ended, on Jericho's side, Jericho's just not been interesting. But at least with this, we're kind of going away from the disingenuous Learning Tree. Hi guys, I'm happy to be here. All this type of stuff, and he's become more ruthless again. Goes after Hook, Shibata, and Samoa Joe. They take out Hook, and at least that got kind of interesting on the show. The Young Bucks, it was a very nondescript, about 2 to 5 minute segment on the show that just kind of got thrown away because they announced Mark Briscoe, and then they're trying to figure out who the fifth man on their team is. Also, let's just get into this for a second. So bear with me here. So Hangman Adam Page is back. It was widely expected that he was going to be the wild card in the Owen Hart Cup tournament. And so he comes back. He's got a much darker edge to him, new theme music, and everything. And so he beats Jeff Jarrett, who, by the way, I actually got to give him a lot of credit for making us root for Jeff Jarrett, who's really not really been cared about. But the whole compelling thing about him being very tied to Owen Hart, that made this really, really interesting. So when Hangman comes in and just beats the crap out of him, everybody's booing Hangman. Everybody's cheering for Jeff Jarrett. That's okay. I'm fine with that. But then Hangman gets to the back, and he's confronted by the Young Bucks saying, "Hey, Hanger, good to see you back. Even though we lifted your suspension, we brought you back. Hey, so just so you know, we want you to be our teammate for Blood and Guts. Like, you scratch our backs, we'll scratch yours. Like, do our." And Hangman just was like, "Listen, I ain't your puppet anymore. I don't care. I'm winning the Owen. That's all I care about. Screw off." That right there. If you want to know how the Young Bucks are being presented as authority figures on this show, that right there, that segment, that little 30 seconds to a minute, 90 seconds of television tells you everything that you need to know about where the Young Bucks are, even in positions of power as executive vice presidents in this company, and being presented in this hostile takeover of, like, okay, we're trying to overtake AEW and we don't respect Tony Khan. That being said, not many people really respect Tony Khan to begin with, but that's the problem. So it's like, I don't understand that presentation aspect of what's going on with the Bucks here. And I don't think a lot of people are really talking about just how terrible that this whole potentially compelling angle coming out of Sting's retirement at Revolution, like, what's really happened? Like, up until last night, like, you had MJF came back at Double or Nothing. Okay, Swerve Strickland wins the world championship. You've got these things that are being poked out there, and it's like, at least Swerve's title reign's kind of been legitimized. I would have liked to have seen him on the show last night, but I understand why. There's just a lot going on Dynamite last night. But, it's really, it's almost kind of refreshing, because, listen, a lot of people in the wrestling community have been annoyed with the Young Bucks, and considering the whole fallout with CM Punk and how CM Punk's in a much better place now in WWE, and just seeing the Young Bucks have not won anything in the court of public opinion in wrestling. And then, case in point, they're getting all this television time. They're being presented as like these big time authority figures, and they look like punk kids. Like, you're bringing back Hangman, and it's like, okay, I kind of get the idea of, okay, you're unleashing this monster on AEW, but they look like freaking geeks and morons for, like, oh yeah, we brought you back, Hangman. We want you to be on your team. And Hangman tells them to screw off. Like, it's just like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And these people are supposed to be some of the most important people in AEW. And that is where this whole problem is presented here in terms of why AEW has really been falling down the wayside. I don't really have the ratings in front of me because it's a holiday today. I'll be curious to see if they drew more than 700,000 viewers coming out of the pay-per-view. It was a very good show, as I alluded to when I did my post show last night. I mean, yeah, a lot of good stuff. Owen Hart Cup tournament stuff was great. Bryan Danielson advances. He's probably going to face Hangman. Hangman's probably going to beat Jay White on Saturday at Collision. Spoiler alert, if you don't, I don't watch Rampage. I just check the spoilers. Mariah May did advance. She's facing Willow Nightingale. Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander had a really good match. And it was a type of finish where you're like, okay, Willow in the finals for the second straight year. She's not going to win the Owen. Mariah May is going to win. Chris Statlander's probably going to be involved in that. And that's going to lead us to Wembley Stadium, where it's going to be Mariah May and Toni Storm for the women's championship. And then, like I said, that's your women's world championship match. And the shame in it all is the women's world championship, despite Toni Storm being as great of a performer as there is across women's wrestling, that championship has just not been presented very well across like I think it's a product of the fact that there's just not a lot of women have been in and out of the division. Jamie Hayter's been gone for a year. Saraya, say what you will about her and her past career, like she has not been presented well because the reality is she's very limited, like, and it's just not working, and that hasn't been there. Britt Baker came back and then Mercedes Moné comes in. Like there's just not they're spreading a lot of people across the division. And I will say that you've got Willow and Statlander could potentially they could have another grudge match at Wembley. And then you've got Britt Baker and Mercedes Moné, who had a fantastic segment last night. And another thing I got to say here, I like Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks, whatever. She's gotten exposed since she went to AEW. I think she's a fantastic wrestler, but in terms of the entire package of what it comes to being in professional wrestling, where you have to cut a promo, you have to be entertaining. And what's wild is she's in acting, but every time that Mercedes Moné has come out to the ring since she came to AEW back in March, it has felt completely fake. It has felt completely phony. And she has gotten schooled in so many different segments, whether it be with Willow Nightingale or last night with Britt Baker. You can see why WWE moved on. And I'm sorry if that hurts Mercedes stans or their fan base, but you can see why WWE did not want to pay her all the money and bring her back. It's a shame because I think Bayley and her deserved a satisfying conclusion in front of fans, and they never got that. The one real match that they had was in Hell in a Cell in front of nobody in the Thunderdome. And then she obviously had the great match with Bianca Belair, and they never had a rematch off their incredible match at WrestleMania. And I mean, Sasha, Mercedes had great matches with Becky Lynch, but you never really saw it to this degree, just how much further behind she is in terms of cutting promos and, engaging the audience and sounding authentic and sounding real. Even in a segment with Britt Baker, like easily felt so much more authentic and so much more real. And that's why I think it was a great idea to turn Mercedes heel here, because first of all, it just comes across more legitimate in her element in terms of who she is. But man, in the build up when she got, I was saying this on my social media in the months leading up to her first match, which didn't happen for 2 months. She was just basically trotted out there, given a microphone almost every single week, and it was exhausting. It was not good. And it was amazing to me that Tony Khan consistently kept doing this and trying to create this and trying to convince us that, okay, she is a star, but it's wild to me that somebody of her talent level and somebody who actually gets in the world of acting and should be so much better at this. But like, even in that segment with Britt last night, you could see that Britt just carried herself much better, and she felt more authentic, and she felt like a real person. And it's just like, and then you look at it contrasting with some of what she was saying, like you could buy into it, you could believe in what she was saying. Whereas Mercedes, it felt very phony, which is why her being a heel actually makes a lot more sense. It felt very it felt very weird and just awkward. And it's just like, like I said, people can get mad, or people can trot to her fan base can be like, oh, Mike, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah, I do, because let's get real. I could count so many people. Like Tony Storm has created a whole different character and just feels like a much bigger deal, or at least and feels like really inner element in terms of a character, and not just being fed lines or something, or just feeling kind of robotic, or feeling not really confident in what they're saying. And then you go to WWE, even Tiffany Stratton, who's been in the business a couple of years, she feels legit. And that's the reason why WWE decided to move off it, because they've got so many people in their system. You could look at NXT. I know a lot of people were ripping Roxanne Perez and Lola Vice. Roxanne Perez is 21 years old. She's young. Lola Vice has been in the business for a year and a half tops. But you can see potential there. Mercedes has been doing this for a long time. And as I've said, promos never been her strong suit. And like I said, the biggest disservice that Tony Khan did was trotted her out there as a happy-go-lucky, happy to be there babyface for 4 months. And now it took really Forbidden Door for people to realize, just even as a wrestling in the wrestling capacity, Stephanie Vaquer ran circles around her. So even the calling card of Mercedes was a problem. And then you get past that, and then she gets lapped in this segment by Britt Baker. And okay, so but I am happy with the direction of, like I said, there's really 3 big women's feuds heading into All In Wembley Stadium in London that I'm really excited about. You've got I would love to see Willow has, and I've got a sister who's really kind of a novice when it comes to wrestling. She always gravitated to Willow because she felt authentic, she felt real, and whenever she cuts a babyface promo, or whenever she gets in front of a microphone, it feels real. It's not like she's reading off cue cards or reading off lines, and that's what you want in a real authentic babyface. And Chris Statlander's freaking great. Seeing her get a chance to really shine in this heel role with Stokely Hathaway, I think that could be a potential great match, and that's probably going to be set up off of this Owen Hart women's tournament. So there's that. On the men's side, you're going to probably have Hangman Adam Page versus Bryan Danielson, but I'll get back to the Owen Hart Cup element of that in a second. So then you got Britt Baker and Mercedes Moné is the other big women's Wembley match that they're clearly building towards. And then Toni Storm and Mariah May, you're obviously building towards Toni Storm finally dropping the championship to a very young, and you can clearly see a very developing star in Mariah May. Women's division, from where it was at the start of the year to now, feels in a much better place in AEW because they're starting to get people back. It'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. If Jamie Hayter's able to get back in the ring, because it's a shame. She was such a good champion for the short amount of time that she had it, and then she just got hurt. And we haven't seen her in over a year. It really sucks because she was really starting to become a really shining star in that division. So obviously other big angles, like I said, Bryan Danielson, looks like it's going to be him and Hangman to determine who wins the Owen Hart Cup. And flip a coin on that. I have no idea what they're going to do because, as I said on my show last night, where do both of these guys go if they lose the Owen Hart Cup and they don't face Swerve in the World Championship match? Where do you go from there? If you're Bryan Danielson, Will Ospreay's off the table. I thought that was a possibility. Is it Nigel McGuinness out of retirement, which they've been hinting at since Nigel joined the company, and Nigel hasn't wrestled a match probably in a decade? I don't know. And if you're Hangman, where do you go from there? Do you go partner up with the Elite after you clearly dismiss them? I don't know what's going to happen there. And that's going to be really a fascinating thing to see transpire next week in Calgary. Who wins the Owen? Because you could make a case for both guys, a strong case for both guys to potentially be in the main event of All In. So yeah, that's great. And then obviously, as I mentioned, Will Ospreay, clearly it looks like he's going to face MJF. MJF with the big heel turn on Daniel Garcia. I saw a couple people on the internet saying, "Oh, maybe they're setting up for Daniel Garcia versus MJF." Why would they do that? Why in the world would you do that? Sorry, there's like fireworks I think going on upstairs here in my apartment. But man, it's just like, why would you do MJF Daniel Garcia in your biggest show of the year when you got Will Ospreay standing right there? It's just not going to happen. So anybody who's trying to convince me that that angle was set up so that it could be MJF versus Daniel Garcia, it's not happening. That was a red herring. It's probably going to happen the next week at All Out, which is like, it's not going to be exactly like a week later. I think it's going to be a couple weeks later. They actually spaced it out a little bit more, or you could wait till Wrestle Dream the next month after that. Like, I don't know, but that's really where this thing is that I just think Daniel Garcia is going to be off television for a while. But I do like what that did, because the big problem with AEW is we're continuing here on YouTube, Off the Mic 28, the Off the Mic Wrestling Show, we're calling it now, doing the webcast thing, doing it visual. If you guys get into the YouTube, get into the chats, love to take your questions, anything that you have for me. Like I said, this is really like starting something new. But so the big problem that AEW had been facing for a while is I talked about this with the Young Bucks. That's your top heel act, and nobody gave a crap about them. Jack Perry, really? So last night, by turning Hangman effectively heel, it's up for debate what you want to say, that he's not affiliated with the Young Bucks. He's a heel. And then MJF, who, granted, was very entertaining as a babyface, and you could say what you will about the whole Undisputed Kingdom thing, that's clearly on the back burner. That tells you everything you need to know about the health of Adam Cole. It's a shame because, like, the whole injury at Arthur Ashe last year at Grand Slam changed a lot of the direction of what they wanted to do with this angle. And clearly MJF going back to being a heel, which is the right decision, 100%. Like MJF is entertaining, but he, as a world-class douchebag, that is what he is, what he needs to be, and doing what he needed to do at the end of that show was perfect. So congratulations. AEW kind of corrected a huge problem where they didn't have really established heels in terms of where the company was to stack up for a Swerve Strickland as the world champion moving forward. Because let's get real, like I'm not buying into the Elite. Okada is further down the card, holding like the 5th most important championship there. You've got Jack Perry holding the TNT title. It's like nobody cares, and he's already beaten Christian. And Christian, God bless him, is in his 50s. Like, he can't be a top heel at this point. So bringing in the cornerstone guys, obviously like a Hangman and an MJF, I think that was the right decision to effectively both turn them heel on that show last night. So there was really three heel turns effectively on that show last night, if you count Mercedes effectively being a heel now. Then you've got MJF and Hangman. So like I said, a lot of that show was really, really good last night. And we'll have to see if it translated into the ratings. We'll see if it translates into attendance. It felt like a well-attended show in Chicago, but we'll have to see moving forward what this leads to, and if they could potentially parlay some of this momentum into what's going to be all in at Wembley Stadium at the end of August. Okay, let's do this here for a second, and let's talk about Money in the Bank here. Let's shift over to WWE. I've kind of hinted at it, but let's start off with, I talked more about the Money in the Bank matches on my show last night, but here's the real thing that we need to talk about. We need to talk about some of these matches. There was only, I know a lot of people are mad, 5 match cards from Triple H on Premium Live Events. I actually like it better for storytelling, especially when these Money in the Bank matches are all going to take probably about at least 20 minutes. So I just think it's a smart idea. You're expecting 17,000 people in Toronto, so it's great. It's nice to have a normal start time here in the States with the 4 p.m. Pacific start time, 7 p.m. Eastern, as opposed to these morning start times because of these international shows. It's technically still an international show, but it's in North America. So let's start off with the Intercontinental title. Braun Breaker taking on Sami Zayn. I think Braun Breaker's winning the championship. Listen, you could run some sort of weird finish where Sammy keeps the title. I'm not for like funky finishes, like DQ finishes, or count out type stuff, especially on pay-per-view or a premium live event. I think Braun Breaker needs to win the title here. Sammy's done his job. He really has as the champion. In like 3 months, that's a good title reign. But I think Sammy's better served dropping the title here. You put over Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker turns into like really the next great young star to hold that championship. I think that's an easy win over there. Then also on this card, you've got the World Heavyweight title. I'm very interested to see what happens here with the World Heavyweight Championship with Seth Rollins and Damian Priest. And really, what's fascinating about this is you've also got the element of Drew McIntyre, as I've talked about. And Drew McIntyre, if you look at this with Drew McIntyre potentially being inserted in this match, my big problem is if you insert Drew McIntyre into this equation with him winning the Money in the Bank briefcase, I think it takes away from the already big story at hand with what happens to the loser of the World Heavyweight title match between Seth Rollins and Damian Priest. Seth Rollins loses, he's out of the world title picture until Damian Priest loses it, which if you think about that in like the perspective of where things are going with Gunther being the next challenger, that's not going to be very long because Gunther is winning the championship at SummerSlam. Let's get real. He is going to walk into Bash in Berlin at the end of August as the world champion. That's happening, okay? So even if Seth loses here, he's going to get a chance to challenge for that world title at some point because Damian Priest is not going to be the champion for much longer. That's where this thing has been going for a while. But the bigger plot point is if Damian Priest loses, he's out of the Judgment Day. So if you insert Drew McIntyre into this equation, you're really sacrificing and interweaving so many plot points that it gets so convoluted that I just think it takes away from a lot of the other storyline plot points leading into this match that I think Drew McIntyre, he'll get screwed out of the briefcase in the Money in the Bank match, and that will be that. But let's be real. Based off of the way they set it up, that Money in the Bank match is going to happen before the World Championship match happens on this show. So if you want to ask me about where I think this match is going, I think Seth Rollins is winning the World Championship here. Because why else would you bring him back? Like everybody thought he was going to be gone for a significant chunk of time after he really screwed up his knee at the start of the year, and then he was beat up out of WrestleMania. If you saw fan footage, he was limping to the ring for his spot in the Shield gear in the main event, and ultimately takes the chair shot from Roman Reigns, leading to the finish of the match. Why are you bringing Seth Rollins back? And plus, I think if you're talking about a big SummerSlam match, I want to see Seth Rollins versus Gunther. I really want to see that. Even if it's a 1 month title reign, still, that's what you need to do there. And Damian being out of the Judgment Day, you could have Finn screw him in that match. You can have other stuff happen, leading to Finn Balor versus Damian Priest at some point down the line, maybe at SummerSlam as well. So I just plus, God bless him, Damian Priest is great. He just feels out of place in this role. It feels like a placeholder role. It was a great moment at WrestleMania. He's held his own in the ring, but it's just like in terms of like being a world champion, it's not working. And if you're asking me, Damian Priest, Gunther, or Seth Rollins versus Gunther at SummerSlam, I'm taking Seth Rollins versus Gunther every day, every time. It just feels like a bigger world title match. And even if it's sacrificing that you're hot potato, Seth held the title for 300 days to legitimize it. To get to Gunther, I think it's just a better way to get to that point. Even if you have to have the title change hands a couple times on the way there. Then you got the Bloodline match, which we still don't even know who the 3 Bloodline participants are going to be because there's 4 of them. But you got Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and Cody Rhodes. This could be the main event of the show. We'll see. I have the Bloodline winning this match because clearly what they're setting up for is probably Solo Sikoa facing Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. Maybe in the main event because it's going to probably set up for a Roman Reigns return. It could be Jacob Fatu, which I think would be a really big spot for him out of the gate. But he's just been presented like such a big deal that I wouldn't mind that. So ultimately, I've got the Bloodline winning that match. And if it happens at the expense of Cody Rhodes, I understand it. A lot of people are going to be mad that it doesn't mean that we're getting Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton at SummerSlam. I think fine. You can build to that at WrestleMania because here's what's going to happen. A lot of people are wondering what the main event of WrestleMania 41 is. It going to be Cody Rock or is it going to be Roman Rock? It's going to be Roman Rock. That's what the whole Bloodline thing is leading towards. So ultimately, that's how I see like the other 3 non-Money in the Bank matches. Women's match. I said it last night. I have talked myself into Chelsea Green. It just makes way too much damn sense. If it's Tiffany Stratton, I understand. She's a young star. Could definitely use the bump up. But when else are you going to have an opportunity to do something like this with a talent like Chelsea Green, who's really, honestly, been one of the unsung heroes of the women's division for a while? I think she could really do some good. And potentially win the women's title with it. I think it honestly would be great. So, and I know Matt Cardona would be very happy for his wife winning Money in the Bank. Also in Canada, she's from Canada. I think she's from Vancouver or Victoria, British Columbia. So, yeah, I think Chelsea's going to win that match. And I am all over the map in terms of who I think is going to win the men's Money in the Bank. As I said, I don't think it's Drew McIntyre. So it's down to 5 people. Andrade, I just can't buy into him being like, there's just no investment there. He's just kind of in there. I do think it's very cool that he gets this high profile spot. And I think he'll get some shine in this match. Carmelo Hayes, really kind of like in the Tiffany Stratton role, if you're comparing matches, Carmelo being the NXT call up, kind of the cocky heel. I actually think he'd be a pretty damn good briefcase holder. It just would feel very out of left field. You've got Chad Gable, who'd be very interesting. I just don't know with Chad Gable with all the Wyatt stuff going around. So you bring it down to where we're at with this in terms of like the SmackDown guys and the Raw guys in this match. And LA Knight is also there too, but LA Knight's facing Logan Paul at SummerSlam. So what? LA Knight's going to win the briefcase. He's going to cash it in on Logan Paul for a United States title match at SummerSlam? No, I don't want that happening. Feels like a waste. Plus, LA Knight's already a big enough star. We went through this last year. He's fine. He doesn't need the briefcase per se. I think it would be really cool if they gave it to him, but nah. So I've just jotted through the other 5 men in this match. That leaves Jey Uso. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, he's going to probably get inserted in the Bloodline storyline. When's that happening? There's no rush to get him into the Bloodline storyline. So, okay. Maybe like at this point, by process of elimination and odds makers, you've seen it, Jey Uso has jumped ahead as the favorite to win this match. So I'm going to go there and say Jay's going to win this match. I would not be surprised if anyone else in this match wins it outside of Drew McIntyre and maybe LA Knight. The other 4, you can make a case, but there's a lot of people in this match, and a lot of people are speculating this could be one of the most overbooked Money in the Bank matches out there. I don't see a need to have so much interference in a match. So we'll see. But like I said, as of right now, I think Jey Uso is going to win this match. So I'm really excited. I'll probably do a post show after Money in the Bank Saturday night. We'll see what's the SmackDown in front of a rowdy crowd in Toronto is tomorrow night. And yeah, like really exciting week. Happy 4th, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy a lot of exciting times here in wrestling. Like I said, to see AEW back on the right trajectory is a positive. There's still problems, but I saw a lot of old school AEW in that show in Chicago last night. So have a great 4th of July. Enjoy the fireworks. If you heard them over here, I don't know what people are doing. Some people just get reckless around here. So be safe. All right. I'll see you guys real soon. Bye.